Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen out there in internet world, wherever you are. This is Yvonne DiVita in sunny Binghamton, New York. And that's a big fat lie because it's hardly ever sunny in Binghamton, New York. And I live in Shenango Bridge, but I always like to say that. So good afternoon again. This is Smart Conversations. And today, you know, as we move forward into 2021, one of the things I think a lot of us are concerned about and thinking about is networking, talking, using our voice to communicate. Are you having any issues or questions around that out there? Ladies especially, we often go to a networking event online or off, and we don't know what to say. And we don't know how to make small talk. And we're going to kind of talk you through that today because my guest, Tracey Dobbins, has the answer to how to make effective small talk. Tracey, welcome to Smart Conversations.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Yvonne, for this wonderful invitation. I'm so pleased to be here.
Well, let me tell them a little more about Tracey because this woman is super amazing. Like, I don't know, I'm so in awe of you, Tracey. You were born in England.
Thank you.
Right away. Now it's like, oh, nice. I haven't even been out of the country other than Canada, and I don't think that counts anymore. Tracey Dobbins is currently living in Wyoming. She considers herself an adult why child. I love that, Tracey. Why child? Still endlessly in love with questions, and she's a natural people connector. She almost pursued her love of psychology in college back in her 20s, but the world of art came to her. Her art muse spoke louder. Now, 30 years after a successful international art career, did you hear that? International art career, a series of serendipitous events occurred. They led her back to her other love of her life, human nature and psychology. In 2016, she founded Art of Friends to help provide respectful guidelines for women of all ages to become better friends. In 2018, she founded the second phase of her plan, Master Small Talk, to help quieter, contemplative business women navigate relationships in an extroverted business world without having to use slick sales speak. Say that faster.
Yes.
Slick sales speak. But don't we all want to avoid that? We hear it and we don't want to do it. After years of struggling as an introvert, Tracey gradually overcame this number 2 fear in business by trial and error, and gathering her own field-tested experience over 30 years, along with scientific research, her feminine formula for effective small talk came into being. And Tracey, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this formula that you have and how women especially, I mean, if it's the feminine formula, it's aimed at women. Tell us why women and how it works a little bit for us, we ladies who need it.
Well, I think actually everybody struggles with this. It is the number 2 fear for a reason. It's right behind the number 1 fear, which is appearing on stage. And people, when polled about this, said, I mean, they'd rather die than be on stage. It is mortifying. And that's a really curious, situation. Why is that so uncomfortable for us? And I can remember when it was paralyzing, to suddenly have the spotlight on you, and you we're so fearful of being judged. We are born this way. We
Mm.
fear being judged. If we're shy, it basically is saying, I'm so fearful of being judged, I'm going to retract and not let that happen. So I just kind of recoil inwards. But what's curious, and I'm a very curious person, and I think that is a super skill these days, whether it's in your personal life or it's in your business life. They've done studies on this, and young children, especially around 4, and especially females, we can ask up to 300 to 400 questions a day, which is a lot. That's
Mhm.
asking a lot of
Mhm.
mom. And we're kind of wired differently. There's actually a part of the brain that is connected to processing curiosity, and so it's like a self-fulfilling cycle for us. We to ask a question begets an answer, which begets another question. It's like this really wonderful cycle. So I think of myself as an adult why child. And when I've mentioned that term to several ladies, go, oh yeah, I was always asking why. And what was so funny is my mom finally got a little wise to it, and she came up with this explanation. And she would say, "Oh, that's because of Scotch mist." And I said, what the hell is Scotch mist? I knew that wasn't the answer, and I would just keep going after her. But bless her heart, she just didn't really have this wherewithal. But I was just constantly asking questions. And what's really interesting is when we move into our teen years, we go from hundreds down to like single numbers, because what's happening is we're in our peer situation. We are deathly afraid of making ourselves look foolish, asking the wrong question, not knowing the answer. All of that makes us just recoil inward. And some of us never really get the chance to come out again.
Hmm.
So I think that leaves a lot of ladies with a quieter voice. We haven't really had the experience where being very vocal has been a positive thing. We end up feeling like it's just safer to just kind of be the observer, the listener. And that's attributed quite often to an introverted behavior,
Hmm.
where we're quite happy to be the observer and the listener, because we're constantly processing information. We love information, in fact. Now, the extroverted women amongst us you'll hear this as it's happening. They'll process out loud. So these are the women that love to talk, that are comfortable talking. This is just how they process information. So you kind of have two camps, and it's interesting when it's networking time, because we have two very different approaches. And quite often, the quieter introverted ladies will get a little intimidated, because by the time we've thought of our answer, some extroverted
Yes.
lady has already grabbed the
Mhm.
microphone, and the conversation's off on another area. So, well, I did actually have an answer, but I didn't get time to put it in there. So you can see there is a kind of a dichotomy that happens. Those who are super quick and can think on their feet and out loud, and business globally rewards the extrovert.
Wow.
That's a fact.
I really, that's really powerful to me, because Tracy, I can remember in school, even if I knew the answer, I was
Mm-hmm.
too afraid to raise my hand, because part of me said, what if it's not the answer? What if I'm wrong?
Exactly.
And
That
so I
fear of
was just,
judging.
yes, I was always afraid. And I grew up so focused on other people and that was my answer to it being the introvert was, well, I just paid attention to other people, and I stood in the corner. I didn't want anybody to see me, and people laugh at me now like, what are you talking? No, and that, as a child, I never wanted to be out in front. And I think what you're doing now, especially for women, Tracey, especially helping us, even I've met even extroverted women who have those moments of being an introvert. And here's my question, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, is this a nature or a nurture? I mean, if you had a strong mother who taught you to be confident, are you more likely to go out and be confident? Or do you, maybe if you're born with this personality that's quiet, you just aren't going to be anyway? I'm wondering what happens there.
Well, the facts are that, introverts, we actually are chemically different. Our brain is a little different. We are, there's a theory that we are like sort of hypersensitive to a lot of the chemistry that extroverts need more of, we need less of. So we actually are like, okay, I'm saturated here. My energy is just gone. I've got to retract by myself and kind of recharge, then I can come back in. Whereas the extrovert is getting that energy from the interaction, from the stimulus of being with others. So again, you can see there's very different, just very different parameters. So I think we are a mixture of both, and we can rise to the occasion to be extroverted if we have the confidence and we have the skills and we have the knowledge to be that side of ourselves. But we're going to come back to our stasis, our core, which is kind of solitude. We're thinkers, and we have to have alone time to do processing and to think about things and make sure that we are on track and we feel right about this, or we don't feel right about that. So now we have to resolve it. So how do we resolve it? So we have all these wonderful internal dialogues that are going on as part of our nature. So you can be both, but your chemistry is going to dictate really where you fall naturally. This COVID time has really, I think, clarified who is who. The extroverts are like climbing the walls. They're like, I need stimulus. I need other people. And the introverts are like, well, this is like business as usual for us. We're okay. We just are reacting to it quite differently. So maybe that's the question for the the listeners. Have you been feeling like you absolutely can't, you have to have other people, you can't be content and comfortable with this much solitude, because it's a lot and it's sudden. This thing just came upon us very suddenly.
And it's different too, isn't it, Tracey? It's different in the sense of chosen solitude.
Yes.
When you can get out to the grocery store or the movies or go have dinner with friends is totally different than what we're experiencing now. So talk about that, because as an introvert, I sadly I'm very sad to say that never occurred to me that the extroverts were having problems. I was so into this is fine. I don't have any, I'm good right here. And then I started hearing about this whole thing where people were just, like you said, kind of climbing the walls, kind of, we got to get out. I got to get around other people. So talk to us about that, because that's fascinating. And it reminds me I need to look a little bit outside of myself sometimes.
Well, I think, again, this was just very sudden. It was forced upon us. And you're right. Before we had the choice. whether we wanted to, spend more time with ourselves, which allows us to learn about ourselves. Because if our attention is constantly outward, we never take the time to go inward and kind of do what a lot of people, call the, you have this sort of coming to Jesus meeting, around 40, where you just start really evaluating everything and like, hang on a moment.
Oh.
I'm kind of having that midlife crisis. Am I even, the track that I'm on now is the track that I've been on, but is that the right track now? It might have been the right track 20 years ago, but am I happy? What makes me happy? I really don't know. How am I going to find that out? There's this whole inward evaluation that happens, and we kind of label it, the 40-year itch. But I think humans just have to go through that. You've got to take time to go inward to figure out who you are. Once you have some idea of who you are, then you'll know what kind of things make me happy, what kind of people make me happy, what should I be doing, what shouldn't I be doing that really doesn't bring me joy. You absolutely have to kind of go through that filter. And I think with this forced, pandemic, a lot of people have been suddenly, wow, I hadn't really thought about this, but they're forced to. And it's happened a whole lot earlier than it might normally had this pandemic not played out. But I think for the extroverts, online connections have been, a godsend. And there's, many people that I'm sure everybody knows never really thought about having a digital presence, but suddenly that's the only way to socialize. Or should I say it's extremely limited as to how you're socializing, because it's maybe a very small, family or immediate or a neighbor, but now, you can make these wonderful new connections with people all over the globe. That is phenomenal.
And I think it's happening. And I think
Absolutely.
that what sometimes what we need is the guidance that you have, is this feminine formula for effective small talk. Because let's say I'm invited to actually, some people are actually having like happy hour. So, hey, there's like 15 of us getting together for happy hour, and 5 of them, and you don't know 10 of them, and you're thinking, I'd love to see the 5 that I know, but I don't know these other 10 people. I don't know how to talk to them. How do you talk to them on Zoom?
Well, for one thing, for the introvert, Zoom is pretty uncomfortable. Depending on how the Zoom is set up, whenever somebody speaks, all of a sudden they're like larger than life on the screen. And that's terrifying. It's like all of a sudden the spotlight comes on you. You've got to perform. You've got to say the right things. You've got to, am I looking good? Have I got something in my teeth? I mean, all of a sudden it's a stress if you are in that kind of a networking situation. So ideally, introverts, quieter women, we prefer smaller groups where it's not like one of 10 or one of 20 or one of 100. But the breakout rooms, that is a better way to spend your time and really give people, it's almost like, you're walking around, you're having a wonderful cocktail party. You're walking around and you walk into this room and there's these 3 women and they're close enough seated wise that they're talking together and they say, hey, come on in. We're talking about such and such. And oh, okay. And so you go in and, we sit down. And so if you're in a breakout room, that is more, it's more intimate. It is more equal, right? I mean, if someone, if there's an extrovert in the mix, because again, you've always got to kind of figure out, this nature is always going to be in your scenarios. And what do you do? If they suddenly are the, the chatty Cathys that just don't stop talking, and it's all about me and it's my life, and nobody can participate in that.
Mhm.
It's a monologue, and we're captive. And that happens an awful lot in small talk. And ideally, in any situation whether it's online or whether it's offline, you want to make that other person feel comfortable. You
Mhm.
want them to feel at ease, where they are feeling like, okay, these gals they're kind of similar to me. I feel like maybe I could share a little bit about myself. But keeping the focus on the other people lets their guard come down sooner, and you get to learn, who is this person? How do they fit value-wise with me? Do they fit at all in my life? Maybe they're a potential friend. Maybe maybe there's somebody I could do a business situation with. Because I see we've got a lot of parallels in business. We might not have as many parallels in our personal world.
Mhm.
So ideally, if you can let other people talk and just listen, that is one of the most important skills I totally think should be taught in school. And very few parents think to teach this, but it is one of those skills that will change your world. Because when you're doing small talk, the key to this is listening, because it's going to tell you about what to talk about next, maybe
Hmm.
what not to talk about as well.
Mhm.
So you're constantly kind of in the detective mode. When times come and you have things to contribute, don't just stay mum and say nothing, because people can't bond with you that way.
Mhm.
But the more outward you are with your attention, the more you're learning. And that lets that other person feel good, because they're talking about something they know all about themselves.
Yeah.
And you're learning where that might fit. And it's okay if it doesn't fit at all, because you still want to leave that small talk experience better. And maybe it's some connections that you have, or some resources that you have, that you've realized now that you've listened to them, oh, this would be of service to them. I should offer this. So you can keep a relationship going, but that first initial connection kind of sets the tone. It lets you know we're on the same wavelength, or no, this is somebody that would be better in my life, kind of at a little bit of a distance. Not really someone I'm feeling is going to be a BFF with some time behind it. Yeah, you just have to let people show you who they are, and then
Yeah.
you know how to react.
Well, one of the things I like is your do's and don'ts, and you have a do's and don'ts sheet, and I will let people know how they can get that from you, because it's really as important to know the don'ts as it is the do's. And one of the things that you said, you used the word intimate, and I like the word intimate, because we need to understand that it doesn't mean sharing these deep, dark secrets, from your childhood, or something about your husband, or whatever it is. It means opening your ears and listening, and kind of, for me anyway, it kind of means following your heart a little bit. So when I meet someone, I'm trying to do what you described. I'm trying to listen, and I'm trying to see where I fit, where they fit into my world, and etc. And the intimacy comes when I hear an aha moment. And for instance, when you and I were talking, and we were talking about women and friendships. And I think this small talk thing is huge, but this women and friendships is what really got me. Talk a little bit about your work with women and friendships.
Well, I think you touched on a really, really good point. And this is something that a lot of women and men struggle with.
Mhm.
Boundaries.
Mm.
What is too much vulnerability?
Mhm.
Um, we have a need to be a little bit vulnerable And it makes sense because we're in essence saying, I like you enough that I'm going to trust you with a little bit of information about me that potentially could come back and hurt me, but I'm going to trust you with this. So there's almost like a trial, sort of back and forth with each other's information, because the worst thing you can do is breach a trust and gossip. That is the kiss of death. You can't really recover from a breach of trust very easily. Sometimes you can, but once it's broken, you've shown that person you break trusts. Why would they want to rekindle something that you've demonstrated you're not really safe? So definitely stop the gossip. That can come back and bite you forever. And people, if they hear you gossiping, they're thinking, well, I'm not going to trust her with anything I say because she's going to be talking about me as soon as I leave. So we have to sort of do this friendship housekeeping. And most of the time, women learn how to be friends from their mother. That's our role model. But not all of us had mothers with good friends, because maybe her mother didn't really have friends at all. So we're all a product of our learned experiences. And if they had a lot of toxic friends in the mix, for example, we might think that that's normal. Because that's what we've seen growing up. She had a couple good friends, and she had some that were just kind of, I didn't like their company. I'd go play when they came over or whatever. So it's really, excuse me, I think it's really important that women understand what is a healthy friendship and what is not. And that really was the seed. I was invited to be part of this project, which talks about becoming a better friend. And I kind of distilled it down into like 5 stages. And those 5 stages are also sort of part of the the midlife crisis that we go through. These are kind of some of the, so there's a connection there. But ideally, the better friend we are to other people, that's going to draw that caliber of person back into our life, because we recognize in others generally what we recognize or what we know within ourselves. And when we meet people, we're constantly in the back of our mind, which governs a lot of what we say and what we do, is we're trying to figure out, how are you like me? How are you different from me? Is that too different from me? And we're, this is just kind of a little internal chat that we're having, but you want to be curious, because people absolutely love to be heard. And most people nowadays listen simply with the intent to reply, rather than really hearing that other person and confirming that you're listening by what you say back. That will endear and bond a friendship faster than almost anything, except laughter. Laughter is a big one. Laughter is a big bonder.
But I think humor and laughter. But
yeah,
we're coming to the end, and I'm so I don't want it to be the end.
There's so much.
We have so much more we could talk about, because I really, maybe you'll have to come back. I would love to talk about how, let's say, a woman and a friend going to a networking event might help each other. One's an extrovert, one's an introvert. Do they help each other? And how does that work? Because I think you can speak to that, correct? I would also love to talk a little bit about this, what you mentioned, how we learn friendships from our mothers, for instance. And while you were talking, I was thinking about my mother, who did have some women friends, but really not many, and then myself. And I didn't really have any women friends when my kids were little, but I do now. So
Mhm.
I'd love to get into those areas with you, because am I on the right track here that this whole thing about women's friendships might influence this wonderful feminine formula for effective small talk?
It's going to, because it's going to govern how you start any relationship
Mm.
with another woman. And what is really curious, that this is something that came up a lot in the research that I did and the studying that I did, everybody defines friendship differently.
Oh,
And therein is the crux. That's the
oh.
problem. We are so quick to label a new relationship a friendship, and a lot of that's conditioning. There's a reason Facebook calls new people in your life friends,
Mm.
because as humans, we crave friendships,
Mm.
because we were tribal. There was safety in a tribe. If you
Yeah.
were outside the tribe, you were the one that got picked off and in the raid or whatever it was. We are wired to connect to other people for mental clarity, safeness, validation, to be incorporated. It's kind of like it's the family thing. It's why we
Mm-hmm.
are so connected to family. We have to feel connected to our kind. The problem is finding our kind.
Mm-hmm.
And that quest, Yvonne, is lifelong. It never
Yeah.
stops. It
Yeah.
begins in the playground. It begins in the playground because that's the first time we're outside of our family unit,
Mhm.
and we're seeing all these other different races and religions and people brought up very differently from how we were. So
Mhm.
that's kind of when some of that dialogue starts entering our thoughts, and it can make us very tolerant and accepting of the differences that now we're seeing, or it can set up some biases
Mhm.
and some not so good things. Um,
Wow.
but I mean, it's just that we're just scratching the tip of the
Yes,
iceberg.
I
We
think we
really
are.
are, and it definitely merits, I think, another conversation.
I hope so. But before we sign off, before we say goodbye, please hold your book up again and tell us
Oh,
a little bit about it.
okay. This was a project that I was invited to participate in because moms are so overworked, so overtaxed, so devoting every moment to the children or the child,
Mhm. Mhm.
they exclude themselves.
Yeah.
And that is not going to be, you can't endure that for very long. Women have to have their friends. This is how we learn. This is
Mhm.
how we nurture each other. We learn vicariously from each other. So this lady, Madeline Davis, asked me would I be part of this project because she knew I had specialized in female friendships. I'd done many, many years of research on it. And I said, I'd love to. There's such a need for
Mhm.
this. And I can bring a lot of, this to light. So it kind of, the way the book's structured, it's 5 steps. So what I tried to do was sort of distill a quick down and dirty way to really, at this moment in time, look at who's in your life, how to evaluate them, what to do next. And it truly will change your life. You must get rid of the people that don't add a value to you in some
Mhm.
way,
Mhm.
because they're either supporting you or they're dragging you down. One of
Right.
the two. I mean, literally, there's not really a middle ground. And you
Mhm.
have to truly go in and sort of do a mental inventory of who are you calling friend, and do they really merit that title?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
it could just be an acquaintance that you know only on a surface level,
Right.
because there's different levels of friendships, there's different kinds of friendships, there's an evolution that friendships go through. That's for part
Yes.
2.
Well, and
There's a lot.
definitely we're
It's a
going to
lot.
do that. And I'm
Oh,
going to
good.
let them know all about the book also in the written portion of the blog post and how to get in touch with you, Tracey. Tracey,
Great.
tell us your website.
I have 2 websites. The first one, which was to literally help women with this personal side of female relationships,
Mhm.
that's artoffriends.com. smartsmalltalk.com. And then the business side of your friendships in business, in these business relationships, because they're quite different from the personal ones, that is mastersmalltalk.com. And I do have a gift that I created for your listeners that talks about your best first digital impression. So if you think about it, we've gone from 5 senses down to 2 senses online.
Yes.
It's a big shift. And there's a
Wow.
lot of adjustments that we need to make. So this free gift for your audience talks a lot about that. And it has a free review and recommendations with me at the end. So we get to
Awesome.
meet without any obligation, but it's very important, and it changes the trajectory of your life when you have good people in it supporting you in that direction.
Makes sense
Yeah.
to me. So Tracey Dobbins, I can't thank you enough. We will
Oh,
definitely have to have part 2
yes,
because there's so much more to say about
there-
all of this. But in the
there-
meantime, I will share with them how to get their free gifts. I am so glad you could be on Smart Conversations. Thank you for your time today.
my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Yvonne.
And this is Yvonne DiVita from Smart Conversations. We'll see you next time.